Okay, so I am Clerk. I'm the Kingdom Earl Marshal for the Middle Kingdom. Tonight I am joined by Sir Droost and Master Isabel. Droost is the Deputy Kingdom Earl Marshal for Armored Combat, and Isabel is our amazing clerk of the roster. So that's me. Droost, do you have I don't have anything necessarily to start off at the beginning. Droost, do you have anything you want to say at the start?
Nope.
Okay. Isabel, do you have anything you'd like to say at the start?
No, I do not.
Okay. So this is really a time for people to have questions. So does anybody have questions or something they'd like to talk about?
This is Godfrey. I have a question. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
We can.
So, and this is not meant with any snark, so I feel like I have to add a caveat, but I was just curious. So I'll lead off this like two-part question. So all knights are warranted marshals. Is that right, or am I off base on that?
Nope, that's incorrect. All knights are given all tournament weapon forms, but they are not automatically made marshals.
Ah, okay. That was just a question. I wasn't clear on it. I thought they were. So anyway, that was one of my two questions. And then my other question is there any thought about streamlining the martial training process?
The question is there any thought to streamlining the martialate training process? And I can say that for the armored martialate, I'm not counting combat archery and siege. For armored martialate, we do have, I don't know that we can get much more streamlined than we are. We're asking people to work 3 events. One of those events can be, I've been running sessions where we do review, and that counts as I said as the signatures. So it's pretty streamlined already. You take that class and you work 2 events, and you get melee and then take a test. Do you have any other thoughts?
Godfrey?
Yes.
Can you please mute yourself? You have a lot of background noise.
Okay, I went ahead.
If you are not asking.
No, I muted Godfrey. Godfrey, if you have a follow-up question, we'll need you to unmute too. I don't think Droost could hear. Droost, did you hear the question? I can't hear you.
Yes, I did.
Do you have anything else to add to that?
I personally think the martialate's pretty streamlined as it is. It's only what, 6 signatures total now?
No, it's 3 events in a variety of areas, so it's more than 6 signatures. My cat is getting on something. I'm going to be right back.
Yeah, I mean, unless people are having issues with making those events and doing the signatures, I don't feel that, like, besides going through more like training, which is part of the plan, to go through some videos for weapon inspections, armor inspections, and also doing clerk duties and that type of stuff, which are going to be coming out the next year, which Kellick and I have been working with, slowly trying to put all that together. Being somebody who's been around for a few minutes, I actually feel that it's pretty streamlined now. The only issue that we've had in the past is trying to find paperwork, which we're working on trying to streamline that.
Okay, so basically I've got 4 columns with 3 signatures,
Okay.
which is 12 signatures. I have filled up all the columns once or twice over. Well, I filled them up. My issue is finding authorizations. I finally got one when I went to and I marshaled down in Shattered Crystal, and finally found somebody to authorize. So and I go to events, but unless somebody's authorizing, I can get signatures for everything else, right? So, and there just hasn't been a lot of authorizations to be done, honestly.
Okay. That's unfortunate. We'd like to see more authorizations happening. I think authorizations are one of the more important parts of the marshalate. And so I don't know that I want to say that one authorization signature is enough in that case. I would recommend trying to get to events early. Authorizations tend to happen early, and they tend to happen. I would expect we'd have some coming up in the spring. They seem to be more in the spring and the summer than maybe in the winter. If you haven't attended one of the lectures, if you're coming to RUM, I'm teaching my Marshal refresher class. That would get you a signature too. If it really becomes a burden, we can try to figure out some other way. But you did say that you'd like to see about having it streamlined. But what we should really be asking is, how would you want it to see it be streamlined?
Well, so you have a dozen signatures across 4 different fields, right? So 3 signatures for each field: paperwork, inspections, authorization. I don't have it in front of me. I've gone blank on the 4th one, but I remember there's 4 columns with 3 signatures on each column. The paperwork, I don't see you needing more than like 1 time doing it, you know. Inspections are easy to get. I do inspections all the time now. I do it with marshals around, obviously, but those are easy to get. Honestly, the only one I've seen being a bit harder, and there's no set way to do it until I start calling people, hey, can you authorize in something so I can go out and get my signature for this authorization, right? I do show up early for events. I run events. You know, there has not been, at least where I am at, and it's hard for me to go to Ohio just for a signature. I can't do, you know, 8, 10, 12, 14 hours. So, yeah, you know, something more local. I don't know if there's a substitute for it, but it's definitely, you know, an issue. Here's your paper. Go get your signatures. Have a nice day.
Sure. Atez floated the idea of our mock authorizations allowed for MITs to get signatures. We haven't allowed that presently. I think that's something that maybe me and Drews could talk about. We usually haven't had too many people. This is the first I've heard of people having a problem getting authorization signatures. So it's something that I think we'd want to talk about and review before we kind of move on from that. The other part of marshaling or of marshal warrants or the MIT process that we should talk about a little bit is combat archery and siege. And we know that that is we feel it's a little bit more onerous than it needs to be. And Drews and I have been working with some others to try to streamline that process. So we don't have that hammered out yet. But we are having a couple of meetings with over the course of November to try to work that out to try to streamline that process. So we hope to have that coming out.
Don't offend that. Well, you can watch things or you can play. What do you want to do?
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and move on. Is there another question? Does somebody else have another question? Or Godfrey, would we answer all of your questions?
You did, and it's interesting because the point of becoming a heavy marshal was to move into siege marshaling. So, you know, but it's like steps. But anyway, yes, you did.
Okay, great. Does somebody else have something they'd like to talk about? Fox Uller said but I don't know if that was on purpose or what.
If I could pop in here real quick, this is Casimir. On the Godfrey's question and the idea of doing mock authorizations, I just wanted to comment. I have a government certified certification. To have a government certification in an area where I'm required to be observed periodically working with clients. And I'm allowed to do a mock of that working. And that's a government certification. So I think it's something we could probably work out. Just my 2 cents worth.
Okay. Thank you. It's something that we've just heard of, so I don't want to, I mean, it's something we'll consider and think about. Historically, we have not had a problem with this that I've heard reported, so it's something we need to look into a little bit more.
Yeah, if I can throw in something on that, I agree with Uller. I don't see a problem with doing a mock authorization, but as you just stated, Kelly, I've never had a problem having authorizations to run. So if it is a real problem now out there, then I think the idea of a mock authorization sounds valid. But of all the marshaling issues to do in the MIT process, the running authorizations doesn't tend to be one that you have trouble finding in my experience. So
if I could toss in a comment, and that is that reauths have been at a low because of the COVID forgiveness over time, but those are wearing off. Time has passed enough. People who haven't fought in 3 years are going to be reauthorizing. People who have decided that over the time they want to now try a new weapon, they're going to authorize. I think that we are going to see a spike in authorizations and reauthorizations just because the timing of that expiration of your old auth card is gone.
That's an excellent point, Rocco. Thank you. So hopefully that'll work out. Tez says it is something in Midlands at least. That's the most common missing signature she's seen on paperwork. So we will take that under advisement and we'll be thinking about it. I got a comment about something they'd like to have considered, removing headshots or face thrusts as a legal target and move as a kingdom-wide practice. I think that would put us a little bit outside of society practice throughout the known world. It kind of be divergent from the greater SCA and how we kind of do things. So I'm not sure that that's a direction that we're going to likely go at this time. Drew, do you have any thoughts on that?
We actually, my thoughts on that is we're actually more restrictive than pretty much the known world, because out west it's 360 head engagement. They allow face thrust. They allow thrusts to 360. If you turn your head and get caught, you're still a face thrust. You're still dead. So we're actually more restrictive than the society's minimum.
I think I interpreted that question as removing head shots and face thrusts. So removing the head as a target is how I interpreted that question. And I think that would, you're right that the West is a little bit more expansive on their thrusting, but I don't know anywhere that's doing an experiment to do away with headshots. But that's
Headshots, and yeah.
That's a interesting thought, and maybe we will think about that some. Gilbert, I see that you said you had a handbook question.
Yes, I'm looking at the current one that's available on the Midrealm site, and it has V2020-02 PDF. I downloaded one in May that is 2020.03 PDF. Which one's the current version?
So I would have to go and look at that, but we're going to be having a new edition hopefully coming out within the next month.
Okay.
So it'll be,
Because there's some fairly significant differences between the two in revisions to corporate and mid-realm. So
okay, off the top of my head, I don't know which one. I haven't looked at the one that's on the webpage. But the one that I think that we put out one for commentary, and that's going to be more the direction that we'd be going.
okay.
I don't expect there to be major changes from the one that we put out for commentary. So if you need one to look at in the interim, I'd use the one that we put out for commentary. Anybody else have a question?
I
Yeah,
have. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm
Nels.
sorry, the one that you say the version that's out for commentary, where would I find that?
It's currently, it's definitely available on Facebook, which I know is not the most helpful. The commentary period has closed, but I can still find that and put it in the chat if you give me just a moment.
Thank you.
Rocco, do you want to ask your question while I'm looking for this?
Sure. I was giving you a chance to be not distracted. This is actually a question from Radigan, who isn't here right now, but she asked me a question last night, and I couldn't find the answer for her. She was looking for specifications for fiberglass shaft arrows, and was having difficulty finding them. She asked me about the Marshal's Handbook section on combat archery, and I'm like, sorry, honey, I don't have a better answer for you. Is that something that's coming out in the new edition in a month? If I can put her off a month.
So I did a poor job of being not distracted there. I think Nessa posted the handbook up already, so I think she beat me to it. So I think Nessa looks like the same as mine. I just have the Facebook link. So your question, Rocco, was about specifications for combat archery arrows.
Yes, specifically crossbow arrows is what she was asking me about. And she was having a hard time finding the specifications because she's going to be putting together her kit in the next month or two, and doesn't want to make things that aren't going to pass.
Sure. I know that the specifications are in the version that we put out for feedback.
Okay.
I went and we cross-referenced it to society to make sure we had everything. So I've done a pretty thorough job recently of looking through it, and we saw those in there. I had a meeting earlier this week talking about combat archery, and there's a couple things that we might make some changes as a result of that to try to get my understanding is that there are a couple of fine rules that you have to have on your arrows at Pennsic that we don't have as a kingdom rule. So I think Pennsic is a little more restrictive than the mid-realm. And we want to try to bring that in line to narrow it down so that if you make an arrow for the mid-realm, it'll also work at Pennsic.
Excellent. She's talking about marshaling and doing inspections, and she also wanted to make sure that she knew, besides what she's making for herself, what else she would need to know. The Pennsic rules are something that she'll want to look into. Right. Thanks.
The combat archery marshalate is getting a revise right now. We are working on a new marshalate test, just to let you know, Rocco. So in the next, I want to say in the next couple of months, we will have a new marshalate test out for public consumption, and all that stuff, just letting you know.
Can I follow up with a question on that?
Sure.
Is that going to be like what the rapier, we were talking about the rapier marshals list? Is that going to be a Google form that you can take online, or are we doing a different route in the armored world?
It'll be online. It's actually Master or Maestra Mirabai who did the rapier one, has also been working on the armored version for us.
Excellent.
And I took a hold on a moment. Okay, never mind. It looked like my dog was about to do something bad in the house. He's too wound up. I'm gonna let my dog out real quick. I'll be right back.
Yes, Ish. Mirabai has been working tirelessly on getting the Google Docs set up for everybody. We're hoping in the next couple of days here to have the armored up as well for Wednesday. Or were you asking for marshalate stuff specific to the CA?
No, well, I would follow up with that question if it were real important to me. And it should be more important, but I was actually asking for just the armored marshal test in general. That would be great, though, if all of them are moving towards the same structure, the same online test, and that's what I was really driving at.
They are we are trying to streamline this entire process in the way of the marshalate tests and trying to deal with like trying to get the multiple systems and also trying to handle all of the other parts that go into the especially for CA and Siege. There are so many components that go into this for safety reasons. And yeah, we're coming up with a list of things right now to work with.
Right, I can tell you each that I saw the a draft version of the new test this week. I actually took it, and I thought it was really good. There were a couple fine points that we have to modify, so I think we're really close to having that one done too.
I was just more going on the lines, so we're going to the same concept and things like that, and that's great that we are.
And then on that point, something we should make mention of, reports are going to be due here in about a little over a month for the Domesday, and we're also moving to a Google form for the reporting too. So we don't have to go through the services portal and do all of that. It'll all be through the Google Doc or Google form. Who else has a question?
I actually had a question.
Okay.
Looking at the new one that got put out, and I didn't check compared to the current version that's out there. It's talking about people becoming marshals in training, and it says that they are expected to be authorized in single-handed weapons, two-handed weapons, and pike before becoming a warranted marshal. But then a couple of lines down, it says that when authorizing new commands in weapon form or specific activity, the marshal must possess the authorization themselves. So although MITs are expected to be authorized in all weapons forms, they don't have to be to become a marshal?
No, so the way that works, that's a great question, is to start the MIT, you have to be an authorized combatant, right? But you don't necessarily have to have all three authorizations, all three of the tournament forms to become an MIT. But before you are a warranted marshal, you need to have all three.
Okay, so to become warranted, you have to have all three.
Right, to start you don't, to finish you do.
Okay.
And also to become an MIT, you need to have a signed waiver, and that needs to go to Isabel. And you do need to be a member. You're as an MIT, you're acting as an officer, and officers need to be members.
Okay, thank you for that.
Etez asked, are the links to the Google report Google Docs going to be linked on the website? Yes, they'll be up there. Mirabai finished up the one we'll be using for Rapier and Armored and Combat Archery and Siege, everything except Archery. She finished that up today. So we haven't had quite a chance to get it put up on the Kingdom webpage yet.
Well, she worked fast. So I have a question about the new authorization standard, the 3 authorization form. Once upon a time, it was always stated that safety was the standard for sword and shield, but there was an expectation of proficiency with advanced authorization styles. Now that we have just the 3, especially I'm going with the two-handed weapon, are we looking for proficiency in the two-handed weapon, or are we looking for just safety like we do with the initial authorization?
So we should back up on this a little bit too. Wolfric asked what 3 forms, so we should make sure we cover that too. We have moved down from having many different tournament style authorizations to having just 3. So the authorizations are a single-handed weapon, two-handed weapon, and pike. So a single-handed weapon covers any single-handed weapon and something else in your other hand. So if you wanted to authorize originally with a sword and a buckler, that's great, or an axe, or a mace, or 2 weapons. Those are all single-handed weapons. So the authorization would work for that. The two-handed weapon authorization is any weapon, any two-handed weapon up to 7.5 feet. And then pike is any stabbing weapon over 7.5 foot. And then the common question we get asked is, if you're trying to use a 6-foot spear, what authorization do you need to have? And you can have either the pike authorization or the two-handed weapon authorization. So that covers both of them. The other change with the authorizations is that you can authorize in whatever form first that you want. So if you want to have your first authorization be spear, okay, your first authorization can be spear. If you want your first authorization to be a polearm, okay, it's a polearm. If you want it to be 2 weapons and go for the single-handed authorization, that's fine. There is, when we're doing it that way, we have your initial authorization and then an advanced authorization. Your initial authorization is whatever you authorize in first. So if you're going out for spear and you're doing that as your initial authorization, we're going to make you fight everything that makes sense. So we're going to make you fight your opponent legged. We're going to make you fight from your knees. I don't know if you're fighting with a 9-foot spear that we'll make you fight one-armed, but we might make you do that for a moment. Whatever makes sense. And for that one, we want to see that you're safe. For if you're going for your second authorization, that's more of we want to see some proficiency in your second form. Drew, you're looking questions. You don't like that idea?
I merely am running through thoughts in my brain.
Okay.
That's it.
Isabel, you have your hand up, so you have a comment?
Yes. With that change, then we are going to have to insist that marshals quit using initial auth on all documentation and start using the actual weapon style, because that I get a lot. They'll put initial auth or re-auth. And
Okay.
so then they're surprised if, especially re-auth, if I only give them one thing, because I can't read their minds. But now with initial auth, I will not know what they went out and fought unless I was standing there watching it. So they are going to have to fill out the actual names of the weapon style.
That's a great point, and we will communicate that out. I think that that's something that with this change in the authorizations, I don't think people widely think about that much yet. But with their reauthorization, they should get whatever authorization they had previously.
Well, we don't necessarily know what they had previously, because some of them, we've gotten some back that are 10 years old. And there were times that the thought was maybe they should redo some of them if they've been that old that we don't have a record.
That's a good point. Cool. Maybe we need to look at the we're talking a little bit about the authorization form, I think yesterday. Maybe we need to look at that and make it a little bit more clear on what we want on that too. So it's good to have that follow up.
Sounds good. I'll make a note.
Okay. Drew, have you processed the thoughts? Got anything else going on?
Nope.
Okay. What would people like to talk about next? Okay, so it seems like it's quiet. There are a couple of things that I want to try to get some feedback on for some of the things that Drew and I are trying to do. We've all had to go through an inspection, and it's kind of a 2-part question. I want to know, are there people that you found have done an especially good job of doing an inspection? And then I also want to hear, as a follow-up, what you think goes into a good inspection. Anybody? Gilbert?
Something I see a little too frequently for my liking is using your thumb to check a thrusting tip instead of the flat of your hand.
Okay. That's a good point. What are other things that you would see that would go into a good inspection that would make it a better experience for you?
Helmets being checked, neck is being checked, hands, elbows, kidneys, groin, ass, knees. Just, sometimes just talking through as you're doing it.
I can share a story. At Harvest Day, I got an inspection, and I don't know who the inspector was, but he looked me over. Everything was good. And with my center grip shield, he noted that he could see my thumb knuckle. He's like, you can't get out there in that. I see you have your half gauntlet on, but it's not covering. You need to take care of this. And I went back and I figured out that I had a strap that had slipped, and I got the strap in the right place and put my hand back in. It's like, I don't need to fix anything. I just need to wear it correctly. Went back to him. He's like, you're good, you're in. But having that level of, he checked everything, and something as simple as you have the gauntlet on wasn't good enough. He made sure the gauntlet was fitting right.
Sure. That's a really good story. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else?
I have a quick thing. We had somebody in Cleveland's print out flat gauges for measuring swords and things like that. I don't have one immediately with me, but they've been pretty handy when I can't find any of the other ones, like the big heavy metal ones, and they fit in my pocket. So they're really nice. Is there a problem with using that versus the standard gauges we have been using?
The issue with that is unless they've been mic'd, like with a micrometer or properly, since I do run 3D printers myself, they can be off. And that's been one of the biggest issues at Penzic. Myself, I'm trying to remember who else was there. We went through just the Marshal's box alone, and we had some major discrepancies with Marshall's gauges that were in the box that have been there since. I mean, I recognize these when I started fighting at Penzic 29. And I know Isabel was there at the same time as we were checking stuff, and it was a lot of, some were off by good amount. Some of the 3D printed ones that we got at Marshall's Point in the first couple of days, heat warps them. So we've had some issues with that as well. It's the problem with the plastic filament. You can check them. I encourage self-check on gear, and then getting to events and having somebody like Kellick or myself or your regional marshal double check stuff. Like we calibrate in the field that I work in, we calibrate our tape measures every week because you could drop it, you can break it. Some of the metal ones, I get my metal one, I run my micrometer on before I go to almost every event now because I'm hard on tools.
That's I don't know that I have anything better to add to that. I don't know I'd break out a micrometer, but that's a fair. I think maybe a tape measure would work, but yeah, that's the only thing I would say too is make sure it's accurate. Roland, I see you have your hand up. You're currently muted.
Yes. Okay. I think I'm on now.
We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. One thing that might be worth addressing in inspections in general, but particularly in armored combat inspections, because they can get pretty physical, is to remember to verbally get consent from the person getting inspected before you start putting your hands all over them. Just a thought in the modern day.
Nope, the best inspections I've had have done just that, where they've gone through and said where they need to touch, they say I'm going to touch your knees, I'm going to check that or something like that. So I agree. I think that is a good practice.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Anything else on inspections? Okay. Did that jostle loose any questions from anybody or any other thing that they want to talk about?
I have a question about the database. So in the database, there are on the armored side, at least for my group, multiple people that have not fought in decades. I haven't reported them in a decade, and they're still there. I thought they were gone, and I think it has to do with the reconstituting of the database. What is the procedure as a marshal for getting those people out?
Okay, so when we populated the new database, anyone who was removed before in the old database, unfortunately, even if they were marked inactive, there was basically a shadow of their existence there. And when that information was transferred over, it read exactly the same as someone who was active. So that's why we performed the audit last year. And we asked for every regional to pass on information to their groups and find out who was active and inactive and send me that information, because you know, there's no way for me to keep track of all 2,500 people in the database or 2,500 active people. So we relied on information from regionals. And when the regional said this person has not fought in so many years, I removed them or marked them as inactive in the current database. So they should not be showing up. However, if that information was not provided to me, they are still showing up. So what I need you to do is let your regional know that you have not seen them in a very long time. And then that regional can pass along that information at this Domes Day, and hopefully we can catch them.
Okay, not to name names or anything like that. Yeah.
Sir Ish, send me your list. I can talk to you. I can talk to the regional directly, since
Yeah,
he is
you
local
know.
to me, and I will take care of that.
Okay, so yeah, I've been through that, and so thank you, Drew.
Thank you, Drew. Anybody else have a topic they'd like to discuss?
I kind of have a branch off of Isha's here. I know in previous times, people have always said, hey, if somebody who is local to you but doesn't necessarily show up at practices, keep them on your local roster that you send into your regional. But I've run into ones where there's somebody who's been on a list and they've not shown up to a practice locally in 5 or 6 years, or in some cases, they are now, you know, practicing somewhere else or marshaling somewhere else. At what point do we remove them from that local list?
So I think that this is a topic where you use your best discretion. Your local list should pretty accurately reflect the people who you expect to see at a practice. So if you haven't seen them in a long time, then perhaps they are. If it's somebody that you think they're coming to events and they're active, and you don't think they're being active in another group, then it's probably it's a reasonable thing to keep them on your list, just so that they're there. I don't have a good hard and fast rule. We can kind of my dog is apparently feeling like a demon right now and barking at me. It's really a matter of we're a society based on courtesy and chivalry. We can extend some house guest things to kind of let people go around. I know that we want to try to keep things accurate, but I don't know how much harm is caused by keeping somebody on your list that you see every once in a while. Max is raising his hand, so I think he's going to disagree with me.
No, I got an idea though. You can hear me all right, right?
Yeah.
I almost never, except for like grand day of tournaments, or like our local monthly tournament, I almost never marshal at home. I end up marshaling on the road more often. I think when it comes to the quarterly report or the Domes Day at the end of the year, I list all the stuff that I did this year, where I marshaled at and what I did. And that goes to my local report. I think we should keep things local. If there's a doubt as to someone, like if we really think someone's fudging that list, it's just a phone call or an email to find out, hey, did he show up at your event? And I think we should keep it local, because I don't know, local just seems better somehow. How would I report otherwise?
Sure.
Would I have to report to every regional marshal in every region I marshal in? And that's kind of crazy too.
I think that this isn't a question about marshals. I think this is about the fighter roster, the people who are at your local practice, keeping them on.
Again, if I'm fighting, the only people I can report to are my local guys.
Right, and I think that that's fair. Tess on this comment, I had a comment on this topic too. She said that keep in mind that someone might not show at a local practice, but do at others. There are also some who are not attached to a group at all. And that's, I think something I was trying to say to get across too, that it's okay for your list, if you think somebody's on it and they're not going from another group, for you to keep them on your list. I see it as not doing much harm to have people be captured, even if they're on two different groups. That's still okay. It's better to kind of capture people than to let them kind of be out there. And I don't know that there's much harm. I mean, I guess if our database might be, I'm sure our database is a little bit overstated on how many fighters we have, but I don't know that that really harms anybody. Does anybody else have another topic or thought on this one?
Actually, Kellick, I'd like to talk to you later about some of the original plans of that database, as far as what the long future intent was for keeping track of active. But I don't want to talk about it here because it's something you may or may not choose to implement, ask a programmer to write.
Sure, we can talk about that, and we'd want to make sure we have Isabel in that conversation too.
Absolutely.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, you guys are quick. This is the quickest one we've had so far. And that's okay too. We're here to listen, and that's all right. If people have a follow-up question later, they can get a hold of us via email, or I think we're all available on Facebook, or yeah, I think those are probably the best ways to get a hold of us. Isabel, do you have any kind of final thoughts or anything?
I don't think so.
Okay. Drews, what about you?
My final thoughts are, please be patient, people. This is a volunteer organization, and we are all trying to do our best while still trying to do our 9-to-5 job. That's
a good call out. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight, for spending your time and helping us to try to make things better. I appreciate that too. Your time is valuable as well as our time. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording now. Have a good night.